I used to like Five Nights at Freddy's quite a lot, actually. I think, like many people, I was very caught into the fascination of FNAF through the sheer mystery of all of it. It had a story that was very under the surface, and it had some very unique horror elements. And that also makes it very strange that I have not played Help Wanted, not played Security Breach, and I haven't played Help Wanted 2 either. I also haven't played, I think it is Into the Pit, I think the last one is called, and I haven't read any of the books either. So what's going on? How can the series go from being something that I join in on a community of analyzing every pixel on scottgames.com to not really feeling any hype? Not even watching full gameplay videos when I don't even want to play the games myself. What happened? This is not me saying the games turned bad. This is more so my personal preference and my expression of it. And also just a very honest clarification, because I haven't played the latest games and I have just watched, snippets of gameplay videos here and there. I am completely 100% open to being factually wrong about some things, about misunderstanding parts of the story, about not realizing that the games are much better than I give them credit for, etc. That is not something, I'm not making any claims that these games are bad in any way, and if I make some claims, as I said, that are factually wrong, please correct me, because I'm very open to that. What this essentially is just an expression of why I feel the way I do and why I think I jumped off the FNAF train when I did, all based on the exact experience I've had with the games, solely on what I know and what I had played. And before we move on to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's, I want to talk about this little thing real quick, and I think this is going to be interesting to you. This is something I bought from an Instagram ad, which is something I'm usually a bit skeptical for, but this looked quite promising, so I gave it a shot. And it has honestly been a bit of a life changer for me. This is a ring that simply helps you to breathe better. And I've always had this struggle with a very tight nose, a very hard time to breathe. I highly recommend it because it has made my sleep better, it has made my workout better, and basically my day better. This is something I wouldn't talk about if I didn't think it was amazing. And it is amazing. So if you're interested, if you have some tight airways like me, or if you just want to breathe better overall, then check out the link on the screen right now or in the description, and you will get 15% off your purchase. All right, let's talk about Five Nights at Freddy's. So what is my problem, can you say? What's my problem? Well, here's the problem. I see Five Nights at Freddy's as having three different phases, in a way. I see them as having what I call the original phase, which is the first 4 FNAF games, FNAF 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I like to call the next one the evolutionary phase. That's the best word I could come up with. And when it comes to the mainline games, these are then, as you might guess, Sister Location, Pizzeria Simulator, and also Ultimate Custom Night. And in there you also have, of course, FNAF World, but I don't really count these spin-offs in this list particularly. And I don't even know if this is the time when the books started to come out. I can't remember for sure because, as I said, I haven't really read them. I have, heard some reviews of them, and some say they are canon, some say they are not, and that's all I know, really. And then you have the third and final phase, which I like to call the modern phase, which then include Help Wanted, Security Breach, and the Ruin DLC for it, as well as Help Wanted 2. And then I guess also Into the Pit. I'm not really sure if that counts as a mainline game or a spin-off or whatever. But at least, let's say Help Wanted 1 and 2 and Security Breach. These are the three phases that I think of FNAF. In the first phase, FNAF 1 to 4, I was completely invested. I watched every teaser, every trailer, and I jumped to the games as soon as they released, each and every one of them. The problem for me, when I think back, happened in Sister Location, when the second phase started to pop out. I call it the evolutionary phase because this is where Scott Cawthon really started to expand his world more. We got a completely new set of animatronics. We got voice acting, full voice acting for the first time. That was not simply Scott himself voice acting. We got a completely new location in a completely new setting that we haven't seen before. We got a completely new gameplay style in a much more linear gameplay without the camera system and the doors and the classic stuck in an office gameplay. Instead, we were able to move around in this underground facility. It was very unique, and you have to give credit to Sister Location for that. It is a very unique FNAF game. But why did my interest really drop off here? Because I seem to praise it a lot. I mean, Sister Location does a lot of good things. But the reason I fell off during Sister Location, I think, is because part of the Five Nights at Freddy's identity was taken out. And what do I mean by that? By that I mean, what is in the core of Five Nights at Freddy's as a horror series? To me, there are two things. One of them is the animatronics, and the second is the sheer confined story. Yes, the 3 and 4 first games take place in various different locations, but they all feel like they are connected together under the same umbrella, if you know what I mean, under the same branch of Freddy's Pizzeria. And all of those games feel very, very connected. And the animatronics that are kind of alive, maybe not, maybe, is kept consistent enough throughout those 4 first games. It's only in Sister Location when this really changes. Certainly you have a whole new bunch of animatronics here. And maybe most importantly, you have full voice acting.
I don't recognize you. You are new. I remember this scenario, however. It's a strange thing to want to do, to come here.
And this, I think, is the key to why I lost interest, to be honest. And let me explain a bit further. It is because in the core of Five Nights at Freddy's, as I said, you have the animatronics and a confined location. But what makes those animatronics in the first Five Nights at Freddy's so terrifying? What was it that hooked all of us in during that first, Markiplier video that we all watched? What was it about Five Nights at Freddy's that really grabbed us and made us feel so uncomfortable? I'm going to tell you what. It was because it perfectly nailed that uncanny valley of animatronics that are supposed to be uncanny, but in a positive way, that suddenly start to do things that are slightly off. They suddenly go from looking out into the stage room to looking into the camera. They have these sudden movements that you don't even catch as you flick through the cameras. Just suddenly they have moved a tiny bit, and there are only 4 of them, 5 if you count Golden Freddy. And this was all under the same small Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. There was some details on the surface story, but there might be a little more and a little more and a little more under the surface as you start digging, as you start speculating, as you start looking around at the different clues in the visual storytelling of the game. That's what made the first one so great. The second game was the start of the problem, as I call it, because suddenly you go from 4 animatronics to, I think, 11. plus minus, give or take a few. But still, it retained that same consistency in how the animatronics worked, for the most part. The third game also is a very cool and I think very underappreciated twist on all of it. And the fourth one is a nightmare, which I could talk about for days. But then you have Sister Location, and suddenly you have tons of new animatronics, and they all talk. They talk with emotion. They talk full sentences. They talk if they were real entities, real human flesh and blood standing right here. And the problem with that is that this takes away the uncanny valley. It passes the uncanny valley. Certainly you don't have these animatronics, these few animatronics in this mysterious little pizzeria brand, these subtle hints that they might be alive. No, they're talking. They're full on talking. They are giving you exposition. They are giving you their thoughts and feelings and emotions. And from that moment, my suspension of disbelief that I've had since the first game, the holes were starting to show in that suspension of disbelief. The fear I had for Baby, the main antagonist of Sister Location, was not even close to what I felt about every animatronic in the first game. And the reason for that is because Baby is too real. She's too human. Suddenly they don't feel like possessed animatronics anymore. Suddenly they feel like more cartoon characters or characters in a more fantastical universe. And it is because of that the animatronics in Sister Location, especially Baby and I think Ballora, they don't feel scary to me. They don't feel like animatronics anymore. And this was really just the beginning of the problem I got with Five Nights at Freddy's, because the talking is one thing, but the other thing was the sheer amount of characters we started to get. We started to get simply too many. The world and the mythology around living animatronics was simply starting to get too huge for its own good. In my opinion, that is. In Sister Location, we had new animatronics. In Pizzeria Simulator, we had new animatronics. In Ultimate Custom Night, if that can be considered canon or not, I'm not sure, we got so many that the whole concept of animatronics was just thrown out the window, in my opinion, because they were no longer considered animatronics in my head. They were considered robots that was completely normal in this universe, where a living, talking, moving, freely animatronic is nothing unique anymore. It doesn't feel special anymore. It doesn't feel unique anymore. And then, what's left? This is the core of Five Nights at Freddy's. The Freddy gang, these animatronics in the pizzeria that came to life, that was the core of the series. But now, I feel that is gone. And as I said, I haven't played Security Breach, but I know there's a whole new cast of animatronics there as well. And if I'm not mistaken, these are animatronics with personalities, with likes and dislikes and stuff. Certainly we're in a completely different franchise, in my opinion. We're in a completely new universe, where living, talking, breathing animatronics feels like the norm. And when it feels like the norm, it's no longer unique, it's no longer special. And you might say, well, if Scott couldn't add any more animatronics, how else could the series grow? Well, in my opinion, it could have grown in many different ways than that. I think the third game actually is a brilliant example of that. But I also think that not all series are supposed to grow to that extent. Don't get me wrong, I love stories that start small, very small in scale, but as they grow and as they progress, they just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and more stuff is revealed, more secrets are unveiled, and this whole universe is expanding to sizes that you couldn't even imagine in the first place. A good example is Undertale, for example. You start Undertale with just dropping down in a hole, and you know there's some mythology from the opening about monsters and humans, but aside from that, you don't really know much. And as you probably know, Undertale expands to some existential, fourth wall breaking, multiversal stuff with lots of great themes. And it's amazing, because that fits the story of Undertale. But with Five Nights at Freddy's, the core is animatronics. that are supposed to be realistic in that animatronics should not be alive. Animatronics should not be free-thinking characters with opinions and full voice acting. Animatronics are moving skeletons with a costume on top. And when you then get this anomaly, which is the first game of, here we have animatronics that don't move exactly the way you expect them to. Is there something wrong here? That creates horror, that creates tension. But that whole concept, I think, is gone now. And that all started with Sister Location. And that is why I say, maybe not all series are supposed to grow to that kind of scale. Because, yes, Five Nights at Freddy's could grow to have animatronic stories all over the world, but that is removing the identity of the series, because the identity of the series, in my opinion, is the confined space. It is the limited pizzeria, it is these few limited animatronics that come to life or are possessed. Maybe, we don't know. That is the identity of the series, and if you start to make living, moving animatronics a normal thing, the identity is gone, the mystery is gone, the horror is gone. I simply think Five Nights at Freddy's worked because it was so small. I think Five Nights at Freddy's worked because it took a concept of animatronics and did something unique with them and made that event special, made that event unique. But when that concept of moving animatronics no longer is unique, then Five Nights at Freddy's is gone. Maybe Security Breach and Help Wanted have really exciting stories. I don't doubt that for a minute. But what made Five Nights at Freddy's into what it is, I feel that is gone. But this, again, this is just me explaining why I fell out of Five Nights at Freddy's originally. Why I thought that magic was starting to go away, why I felt that flame was starting to burn out. Because it became too big for what Five Nights at Freddy's is. Alright, that's it, I think. And here's a little thing. If you want me to do a proper retrospective of Five Nights at Freddy's, and I'm talking a video dedicated to each and every one of the games, including the ones I haven't played yet, then please let me know in the comments. It could be very interesting, but I need to know if it would be something you guys would be interested to watch first. So, let me know in the comments, and I would have to replay the games I have played many years ago, and also check out Help Wanted, Security Breach, and the other stuff as well. Maybe there is some very interesting stuff there that I haven't experienced yet. And if you want to support me, you can check out my Patreon link in the description for some unique perks, like getting videos early, including this potential retrospective of Five Nights at Freddy's. Right, I think that's it. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.